Konnichiwa, what's up, my yukijins? Yukine is back here from a very long break to talk about some news that has caught my attention recently. There has been some discussions recently about strict Japanese school dress codes, such as banning ponytails, and I wanted to take some time to share my opinion on this. However, first, this video is sponsored by Arte Sharika, a Japanese clothing brand that supports local artisans. We sell this type of haori kimonos, which is, by the way, is a UV protection clothing and accessories and many more. So if you're interested, I'll put the link in the description. Mairimashou. I want to start with how I felt about Japanese school uniforms growing up. So this was back in a time when you go outside, you can literally see a dinosaur. We always had to wear skirts and we didn't really have a choice to wear pants like boys. I didn't really like it for one reason, because it's very, very, very cold during the winter and it's not fun wearing skirts all the time. I also didn't like the uniform we had for swimming class. I wasn't really comfortable with the uniform. I'll put the picture here somewhere. I didn't like that for girls. We didn't have shorts, so I was very, very unhappy about it. So moving on to the news I talked about earlier, specifically this news article from Vice that published an article called "Japanese Schools Are Still Banning Ponytails Because They Could Sexually Excite Men," which created some buzz on this topic, with other news outlets picking it up with headlines such as, from New York Post, "Japanese schools ban ponytails fearing they might sexually excite men," and from India Times, "Japanese schools have banned female students from wearing ponytails because they sexually excite men." So yeah, as I said before, Japan does have some strict rules when it comes to uniforms. Also, please don't think that Japanese men are weird or unable to control themselves, as these titles may imply. Anyways, that quote was taken from school administrators said that girls must not wear ponytail because exposing the nape of their necks could sexually excite male students. They were also worried boys will look at girls, which is similar to the reasoning behind upholding a white-only underwear color rule, referring to how most schools require girls to wear white undergarments so that they won't show through their uniforms. Before we move forward, it is important to understand where these standards began. Rigid rules regarding uniforms date back to the 70s and 80s, when it was implemented to reduce bullying and violence in school. But you may ask why this is the case. I can't say for sure, but it's not hard to believe that humans will outcast people who look or act differently. But why have these rules stayed in effect since those times? Some argue that this is because Japan is a collectivist society, and if you stray from the group, you will be targeted as different and outcasted. This is why Japan keeps this strict uniform rules, to ensure everyone looks and acts the same as a group. However, according to Hofstede Insights, Japanese are experienced as collectivistic by Western standards and experienced as individualist by Asian standards. They are more private and reserved than most other Asians. They argue that reason Japan holds on to such tradition is based in uncertainty avoidance, which is the way that a society deals with the fact that the future can never be known. Japan is one of the most uncertainty avoiding countries on earth. From cradle to grave, life is highly ritualized, and we have a lot of ceremonies. This high need for uncertainty avoidance is one of the reasons why changes are so difficult to realize in Japan. I would have to agree with this. Living in Japan, it takes forever for things to change. It is very common that an extreme amount of planning is required to make anything move, especially when it comes to government or political matters. So, going back to the article, that means that these rules have been in place for generations and generations. What we call strict today may have been viewed differently from the 80s. So, without much backlash or push for change, these rules persisted at least up until recently. However, before that, I want to take a second to point out that Japan is not the only country with weird or strict rules when it comes to school uniforms. An article in the Korea Herald stated last year that schools in Seoul have begun scrapping rules requiring their students to don all white underwear in the face of mounting criticism that such a policy can violate human rights. South Korean schools' strict dress code policies, which had been implemented to strengthen students' focus on academics and create uniformity among peers, have been at the center of criticism in recent years for harming students' privacy and breaching their basic rights, such as freedom of expression. While Japan does gain a lot of attention given its place in pop culture, the strict dress codes persist in countries across the world. While these are extreme examples, Business Insider published an article declaring countries such as North Korea, Sudan, Saudi Arabia, and Uganda with some of the strictest uniform codes in the world. Anyway, so how do things look today? Despite the image Japan has garnered abroad, there have been some steps to change the strict dress codes around Japan, which are highlighted in headlines from Vice. Tokyo high schools drop notorious rules mandating black hair and white underwear. And CNN, Tokyo schools drop controversial dress codes on hair and underwear color. However, I want to take a look into Japanese media, which take these changes to the next level. Since the start of April, there have been some relatively large changes happening around schools in Japan. So let's take a look at my hometown, Nagoya. At Kusunoki Junior High School, the uniform design has changed from this year's freshman, and the jacket has become a blazer. In addition, we are now able to choose trousers and skirts because of consideration for sexual diversification and easy temperature control.
ズボンのが動きやすいし、自分的にもスカートよりはこっちのが好きだから選べてよかったな。
These types of changes are happening all around Japan. For example, in Gifu Prefecture, they introduced genderless uniforms that can be worn regardless of gender at Sakahogi Junior High School. Instead of eliminating the traditional uniforms of school uniforms and sailor suits, we have added new slacks and skirt blazers types so that you can choose freely. Finally, in Saitama, Tokyo, they have adopted Uniqlo's ready-made uniforms for the first time in Japan. According to the vice principal of Omiyakita High School, the background to the adaptation of Uniqlo was the voice of students who wanted to freely choose their uniforms. Overall, I believe these are great changes for Japan. I always thought some of the rules set for students were too strict to the point of inconvenience. At the end of the day, it should be up to the students how they want to express themselves. If women wants to wear pants, it honestly shouldn't matter at all. Also, it's not like they just scrapped all policies at these schools. These are still rules, but these are much needed changes. A few days ago, I had a meeting with different suppliers of my shop, and I saw this girl walking outside with this cool uniform. She was wearing pants, and it really made me happy because at least she doesn't have to deal with this cold winter or mosquitoes. Anyways, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section. If you think this is interesting, please share it to your friends. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I post a video every single week. Yukine desha from Yukinews. Mata ne. Bye bye.